We're now on item 11, building new council housing. I'm going to ask Rob Cogings to introduce this item. Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'd like to start by introducing colleagues from Altair, the consultancy that we've been working with for the last year or so on this proposal. So Erin Elliott and Matt McCormack are joining us this evening. This is probably the most significant report I've presented to the council in my 18 years at the District Council. Becoming a landlord again is a significant step for the local authority if this report is approved. The business case has been developed over the last 2 years following a grant from the Local Government Association, and Altair have brought their wealth of experience to support the council in the process. Previously, the Commercial Board has received 2 reports on earlier versions of the business case, and the Community and Environment Committee agreed for the proposals to be referred to the full council. If approved, this report will see the council changing from an enabler of housing to being a provider of affordable homes once again. This will send a very clear statement of the council's ambitions as set out in the corporate plan. Members will note from the detailed specifications for development and management services the complexity of delivering such services. These are best delivered by providers that have the in-house technical expertise and can adhere to the testing standards of Homes England and the regulator of social housing. The initial programme comprises 52 homes focusing on the purchase of Section 106 homes, some new build on council land and the purchase of empty properties, plus a house bequeathed to the District Council by a former resident. The programme will undoubtedly change over time as the nature of development of housing takes place, but the focus for rent at local housing allowance levels reflects not only the overwhelming need in the district, but also the low risk associated with financing and developing and letting of this tenure. The proposal supports the council's climate change commitment with an additional £10,000 of funding for the new build on council land and the retrofit of empty properties. Despite all the optimism and enthusiasm that you know I have for this programme and for other things we've done in the past, I have to remain realistic about what we can be achieved in the short term. It will take time to build a portfolio of council housing, but we believe we have set a good set of specifications which we have market tested with local providers. As our experience evolves and risk appetite changes, we can review our ambitions year on year. The specifications reflect best practice and what we believe we can effectively deliver locally. We want the council homes to be well built and well managed, giving our residents the best opportunity to flourish. We are seeking to use the existing performance management arrangements that the chosen contractor would operate, helping to keep costs down and attracting potential bidders. The programme will deliver a new and ongoing revenue stream to support the council's wider strategic ambitions, and 52 homes will deliver about £200,000 of income per year, though we will need to set aside a percentage each year for the provision of future major repairs. Subject to approval of this report, the council will need to register with Homes England and the regulator of social housing and the Housing Ombudsman. If approved, the procurement documents will go live tomorrow, and in November the council will receive a report on the outcome of the tender process. I would like to thank the colleagues in the housing team, in legal services and finance, and the procurement colleagues at the County Council, along with Altair, for their input and support to enable this report and business case to be presented this evening. I'm happy to receive questions, again with the support from colleagues Erin and Matt. Thank you.
Right, okay, I've got a number of people who want to talk. Councillor Tony Morley, please. Tony Morley.
Sorry, it's not a question. I'd like to move the report as written. I think it's a smashing piece of work. Can I do that, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yes, I'd like to move it as written, and I think congratulations, Rob. It ticks a lot of boxes. Well done indeed. But I've also, in doing this, I'd like to add on, and I'd like this to be minuted, congratulations to all of our officers who are working flat out, evenings and weekends. And I happen to know some of them are even given up their annual leave in order to meet the needs of this current crisis. So yes, it's moved. And yes, I'd like to congratulate the staff as well. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mark Wakeman.
Yes, I'd like to second it, Chair. And I'd like to thank all the officers for the excellent...
Thank you. Councillor Archer.
Been done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Archer. I've lost you, but there's someone.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also really commend the report. I think it's excellently detailed, and I fully support the sentiment behind it and what it's trying to achieve. Just have a couple of questions, however. First of all, it mentions in terms of our carbon neutral by 2030 target, it says that the £10,000 per home that has been allocated in the budget towards that, but it says except for those from S106, which is the large majority, is nearly 70% of the houses. So could Rob just explain why that is the case, that we're not able to put that £10,000 in towards houses that are coming from S106? And also, if we're not able to, I'm sure there is a good reason for it, what can we do to try and make sure that the S106 houses, which make up nearly 70% of this allocation, do have carbon neutral facilities built into them?
Okay, so Rob, do you want to, you and your colleagues, do you want to do that one now?
Yes, Chair, thank you. That's a good question. The new homes that we would be purchasing through a Section 106 programme, they would be built by a developer who would probably not yet know who the homes would be going to when the scheme had started. So he would be building to building regulations and the standards that apply at the time when that scheme was entered. So it's very difficult to for any housing provider to try and retrofit into a brand new house that hasn't yet been completed new energy saving features. But of course, as over time the building regulations change, which is obviously a central government activity, our standards would improve as we go along. So I appreciate it's not quite the carbon neutral approach we'd want to achieve, but it's worth noting that the building regs actually are quite well advanced now, and I think over time they will continue to ramp up as the reviews that I've undertaken come into effect.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've been involved with this proposal right from the early days when it was first brought to the Commercial Board and then to the Community and the Environment. So I'm well acquainted with some of the detail. So bear with me, Chair, if you will. I do have two questions, but I just wanted to say that as council house developments go, this is relatively modest. It's just entails an initial 7 units, perhaps rising over the time to around about 50 or so. And what it's doing, as much as anything, is returning us back to those, in my mind, good old days, where local authorities really did have some responsibility and control for the affordable homes that they invested in. Now, the detail of this, as I say, the investment, phase development and management has been discussed many times, and now it's being brought to the full council for their approval, hopefully. Given the low numbers and the council's management capacity, of course, it makes sense to outsource it. And that modest investment will in fact produce a reasonable return. So financially, it is sound. Now, Rob, if I may, directly to you now, there is some anxiety, I have to say, about perception that these houses will come under the control of a major housing association, thereby losing some of the, if you like, sensitivity and standards that members would want for homes under their direct responsibility. Can you alleviate those fears and outline exactly what are the benefits of council involvement rather than simply moving the funds to let a social housing provider do the whole job?
Rob, please.
And I have a second question.
Thank you, Chair. I think Aaron could provide the answer to this, given his independence in the project.
Super, Aaron.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe, for the question. I think the answer is obviously we are carrying out a procurement exercise bound by procurement rules. So anyone can bid for the opportunity to be managing agent and development agent. Clearly, the procurement documents hint at a local requirement and a local presence, and we will obviously analyse that offer from any providers as part of the process. But at this stage, we can't say for definite it won't be a large housing provider. But you know, with the way the documents are set out, it would favour perhaps more localised and smaller operators to offer the service that councillors are looking for in that respect.
Okay, and Councillor Ratcliffe had another question.
I'm not quite sure whether that answer was precisely what I was looking for.
Okay,
however,
what were you looking for then?
Well, it was this reassurance, as it were, that the council will get benefits from this over and above the route that we have taken in the past, which is to provide funds to a social housing provider to both build and manage those affordable homes. This, to my mind, it is much more of a two-way process in which a social housing provider is facilitating the development, then becoming the manager, but the homes are actually owned by us. Now, as I say, there are some who would say, well, why not just give the funds to the provider in the first place? What are we actually getting out of it?
Apologies, Councillor Ratcliffe. Sorry, to add further detail to that. There is obviously 2 technical specification documents that we've worked alongside Rob and the team that enhance that sort of relationship between the council and the sort of, if it is a local housing association or housing association, you know, there's built-in provisions in there for Rob to have a more hands-on role in the quality control of the management function and the development function, whereas in circumstances where perhaps Rob's giving grants or funding to the housing associations, that relationship is a lot more arm's length, and this will make that relationship a lot more closer. And obviously there will be the ability within those agreements, if the local provider or doesn't perform, then Rob is able to review that, and there will be termination provisions within the agreement as well if they aren't performing up to scratch in terms of the services they're providing to both the council and the resident.
Yeah, can I just say that I am very much supportive of this. I am merely articulating anxieties raised by others. Now, my second question is perhaps more directed to Rob for an answer. And it is, would you make available, as soon as is convenient, the full details of any revised business plan, including the sources of funding for this programme of house building? And I'm thinking that perhaps it would be most useful in the next report to the council.
Yes, of course, Councillor Ratcliffe, we can make the information available. I think at the moment some of it will be commercially sensitive in terms of favouring a bidder or not, so we have to be a bit circumspect there.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's worth saying that we will be able to share the specifications with other potential housing organisations like community land trusts, and what we've done this process we can again help other organisations with in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Finesse. Could I just say that I am knocking down people's hands, so don't worry if you don't think what's going on. Councillor Finesse.
Well, and that's the explanation then, because I was the first to put my hand up, but it keeps going down. So it's you really doing it, Richard, is it?
Yeah, as I said earlier, for everyone.
Yeah, fine. I'm a director of Bradwell Community Land Trust, and we currently have 12 houses which are managed for us by a management agent, and we've got 16 more on the way. So I'm very happy to welcome Rob to the club. Just a few questions. Have we advertised for management agents? If we have, how many are interested? Our management agent is a housing association, and we've only interviewed housing associations, but could it be a private management agent? And once we've got them in place, the management agent, who would choose the residents? Would it be us or would it be the management agent?
Rob.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Aaron, perhaps you could answer the first question.
Yeah, the managing agent could indeed be a non-housing association. I think there is a reality about the requirement for managing affordable housing, that they are the ones with the most experience and evidence of being able to do it. And obviously they're regulated by the regulator for social housing, which would be a key requirement we would look for. But there isn't, in theory, anything to stop private organisations, not housing associations and registered providers, bidding for the work. And in terms of the residents, the council would indeed select the residents that go into those properties. You know, the management agreement allows for that, and obviously there's, on Section 106 homes, for example, there's nominations agreements that give the council the right to nominate people from the housing waiting list into those homes.
So have we advertised for
yeah. Apologies. The OJU, it hasn't gone out yet. The screening notice, it goes out tomorrow, I believe.
Thank you.
Did you have another question?
But Rob, I should say, Rob has market tested it, so we know there is some interest already.
Yeah.
Chris, did you have another question?
No, that answers my question.
Thank you. I've got lots of people who want to speak, so if you please could be as precise and concise as you go. Councillor Bright, then Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, and I will be quick. How fast do you think you could speed up the process if we did borrow the money to build these houses? Why not a bigger proportion of shared ownership? Because they seem to be a great way of getting people onto the housing ladder. And what would be the payback time roughly if we did borrow the money?
Who can answer that, Rob?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's a couple of points there. Matt might want to come in, I think, or from a finance perspective and a business plan perspective. But I think initially I would say that we haven't, as a council, wanted to go and borrow money for a while, so that would be a departure and would need a new committee resolution to do that. And I'm sure Karen Henriksen would have a view on the best way of achieving a decent rate if we wanted to do that. We actually have quite a lot of Section 106 income within the council, so the programme initially is based on using that income to fund development, and we have actually been able to initially discuss potential purchase of homes for £1 on some new developments, where we've sort of squashed together the value of new homes on some sites. So there isn't a pressing need to borrow just at the moment. Perhaps our colleagues from Altair would want to answer the point on shared ownership and payback.
Yes, please.
Yeah, in terms of payback, because we aren't borrowing, we haven't done a specific analysis on what the payback period would be. That's something I think that for further down the line, if you considered it clearly, you'd analyse it at the time. The question about acceleration of the programme, the funding, there's some initial funding there to do some of the initial schemes that have been identified within the business plan. And some of the other opportunities are a bit more market-led. So some of the Section 106 opportunities will depend on what opportunities come down, further down the line. So if we borrowed, would it accelerate things? I don't think it would per se, really. The council within the business plan isn't going out and buying sites in the open market, for example. The sites that it would develop on would be its own land to start with. And Section 106 acquisitions and empty homes. So the funding's there based on the information Rob mentioned. In terms of the split between rented and shared ownership, that's sort of come about through our analysis of the opportunities in the market. And over time that may move slightly as opportunities come forward. But I think that was our initial assessment of what opportunities we'd seen in the market over the last couple of years. And also what was needed to be delivered in the district against housing need in the district. But as I say, that business plan, the intention I believe is to review it annually, and it might be in a year's time you look at it and go, well, actually we've delivered more of this and less of that. So should we target some other tenures like shared ownership. So there's flexibility there within the plan moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Hughes, then Slack. Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to congratulate Rob Cogings on an excellent proposal. It's very thorough, and I've looked at the tender documents as well that were submitted with the proposal, and I couldn't see anything that was missing from those. I'm sure other people may be able to, but I couldn't. I've got two questions. First is a supplementary to Councillor Radcliffe's question, and that's returning to the benefits of council house ownership by the council as opposed to giving the money to a housing association. Am I right in assuming that the improved energy efficiency of housing is easier to provide in a council house than it is in a housing association house, because the housing association has a limited budget which it needs to spread across the maximum number of houses that it can buy? That's my first question. That's to Rob.
Yes,
Yeah, Rob.
thank you, Chair. Well, the underlying factor in terms of what you can build is governed by the building regulations, and most housing associations, unless they have specific funding available, will develop to that specification. I think we have some local exceptions. So we went to the scheme at Taddington that Peak District Rural built recently, and they did include air source heat pumps, which is a new thing really for the Dales. So there are specific opportunities where some have extra funding or have allocated extra funding. But I think Erin may confirm that, you know, for the Derbyshire Dales to add £10,000 to every property it builds or buys, that's quite a unique effort at the moment within local authority housing. So it's kind of apples and pears, I think, in terms of what one organisation can do in one sector and another organisation in another sector. But everybody's trying to push the boundaries in terms of how green they can make their housing. I don't know if you want to add to that, Erin.
Yeah, I think the programme presents the opportunity for the council to take control of development and add in those sustainable features and you know, allow some budget for that. Housing associations, as you mentioned, they're larger development programmes. There's certain efficiency drivers within those organisations as well to enable them to provide funding for development. And also housing associations are in a competitive market against other housing associations. So if they put in financial monies, if they sort of allow extra cost in their appraisals competing against other housing associations, they won't win opportunities if they go over and above the minimum building regulation requirements, for example. There are lots of examples where housing associations are indeed pushing the boundary, but I think this gives a good opportunity for the council to cement that budget being put towards carbon neutral, etc. initiatives and sustainable development initiatives.
Councillor Hughes, do you have another question?
Thank you for that answer. And I think that fully answers my question. The second question is just one of fact, really. I was wondering what the implications of establishing a housing revenue account are. The report mentions them twice, and it sort of suggests that there are difficulties in having a housing revenue account. I was wondering why we would try and avoid having one if that is the case.
Rob?
Yes, Chair. I think, again, I might start off, but Erin may add from his wider experience. There's a limit to the number of homes you can build before you have to have a housing revenue account, and that's 199. That's a kind of set in stone by MHCLG, so you can't really exceed that. If you want to have a housing revenue account, it would involve an awful lot of work within the authority, more accountants, more central costs to try and administer that process, and with it comes a lot of regulation. The model we're proposing at the moment puts all of that work and effort to be done by the housing association, who will have, say, or any other provider, who will have lots and lots of houses where they all have a rental income and the financial skills in the back office to manage the rental income system and you know, distribute the funds accordingly. If we wanted to set that up ourselves, that would be quite a complicated process to go through. So Erin, you may want to add further detail.
Yeah, I think it's just fair to say that the the advice we had from the regulator from social housing was that it would be 199 homes before you needed to settle, 200 homes before you need to set up housing revenue account. And that's just another account where the money goes, if you like, which is then ring fenced for housing activities. But the current setup may allow some flexibility on what monies are reinvested more broadly by the council. So that's why we haven't set one up immediately. Clearly, if in future years the council gets to that threshold, assuming policy doesn't change, they would have to think about how they go about setting up the housing revenue account again.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Slack, please.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome this because we're going back to where we were. It's strange how history repeats itself, because after we came out of the Second World War, we was in big debt, and the government of the time, one of our governments, of course, took it on them to build council housing, and they built enormous lot of council housing in them years. And I'm hoping that again we will repeat that and build more council housing, because as we come out of this tragedy, debt is going to be a great burden for everyone. Mortgages will be hard to get, and we'll have to rely on social housing really. But my problem, Rob, by 106 agreements, are we taking that money away from one of my colleagues has already mentioned it, taking it away from the housing association? Should we be going for something like public loan boards for that finance rather than take it away from other sources of affordable housing? That's my question.
Rob.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Yes, the funding we've given historically to housing associations has been used to support particularly rural developments where there's a higher cost to meet the exacting planning requirements of ourselves and the national park. So that will continue. I'm sure we will have a programme that will continue to support housing associations to build housing association affordable homes in the district. The funding we will have at our disposal will help us to build our own programme as well. So it's not a case of one or the other. It's about both flourishing and working well within the district.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Sue Burford next.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I totally support this initiative to provide new council housing, and congratulate Rob and the whole of his team on this excellent report. Being commercially minded as a council is something we have to embrace, and if we do this by delivering council homes for local people, then it's a win-win. I hope the 52 houses is just the start. But in terms of management services and maintenance, etc., being delivered by a managing agent, I think it's absolutely crucial that what we get is a responsive customer service in terms of tenant enquiries about repairs, etc. I think at the moment, probably quite a few councillors do get complaints from housing association tenants that they can't get through on the telephone, and they do come to us for help sometimes. How would we manage that if it was to become a problem with a managing agent? That's a sort of question. I have got another comment. Do you want me to give that now?
Yes, please. If you do it now, yes, okay. Please.
So can I refer to page 10 and 3.7? So I welcome initiatives such as photovoltaics, but I'm just wondering whether we could factor in domestic sprinklers to these aims. Now, as far as I understand it, private developers don't have to do that, but we can, and I think we should. In fact, installing domestic sprinklers is much easier during the build stage. And as a member of the Fire Authority, I have contacted the Chief Fire Officer at Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Service, and he very much supports the installation of sprinklers. He tells me they're about £1,500 at the build stage per household, but as he says, and I quote, the benefits far outweigh this over the lifetime of a building. It's known that sprinklers work. Apparently, they're very successful in 99% of times when they are needed. He also tells me, I wonder whether Rob is interested in this, that there is a possibility of match funding for domestic sprinklers, and I could put him in touch with somebody at DFRS if that's of interest. I really hope this is something we can do.
Okay, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think colleagues from Maltair will comment on that point initially.
Great. Is that Aaron again, or?
I can come in on the management point. Yeah, so in terms of the customer services and the need for responsive customer services and repairs issues, there's a couple of mechanisms set up in the tender documentation to address this. So there's a discrete section at the beginning of the tender document for the service spec that deals precisely with customer services and indeed lists responsiveness as a key element of that. And you'll see there's also another section on responsive repairs as well. The documents also ask for a set of KPIs from all bidders, and again ask for specific key performance indicators that that pertain to customer services and resident engagement, as well as responsive repairs and all of the other areas included within the specification. So it's something that will be actively monitored by the council, by Rob and his team, in a very sort of formal and structured way. And then in terms of any recourse or powers of the council, that will be set up in the contract documentation. But there's also, of course, the potential not to renew the contract as well. So I think there are mechanisms built in for that. And I will say, Erin and I attend our fair share of council meetings, and I think it's worth saying that when councillors hear about housing management, social housing management, it tends to be generally negative, and it's and actually a lot of associations do, local private providers of social housing indeed provide really good services, and it's just worth mentioning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have Councillor O'Brien.
Oh,
and then,
if I may, Chair, the sprinklers.
The sprinklers. Who's going to answer that?
Yeah, so just on the sprinklers, at the moment, with the type of development the council intends to carry out and be involved in, just in terms of building regulations, sprinklers aren't a requirement. So you heard us talk about the different methods of delivery and Section 106 homes from developers. We're unlikely to be able to get them added into the specifications for those homes. But there may be the opportunity to do that on the homes that the council build on their own site. Certainly, that's something that could inform part of the fire strategy for those homes. On empty homes, it will depend on the nature of the properties being bought, but that's again something that could be included in the specification. It's just it may be that it's very difficult to fit in some of the older properties that the council may end up buying as part of that process. But yeah, certainly something that it would be in Rob's thinking around specification on new homes built on council land.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien and then Martin Burford, please. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question follows on really from Sue Burfoot's, and I think you've answered most of it. I mean, clearly there has to be a benefit to residents for outsourcing the management of council homes, and typically the management company would deliver a fantastic service for the first 3 months, and then it would slowly decline. What is written into the contract such that if it's clear that the management service isn't satisfactory, how long are we tied in to it? How easy is it for the council without any penalty to extricate itself from a contract with an unsatisfactory provider?
Thank you. Rob, who's that? Aaron?
I think Matt's going to take that one.
Matt.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's worth saying on that, on the contract matters. I think that's still being worked on, Rob, is I believe. But what we would usually expect to see would be absolutely recourse where there is serious detriment or potential for serious detriment, and often contracts will link financial penalties to any less severe failings as well, and then it's ultimately how you break down any break clauses that are introduced into the contract as well, in response to those. So those are standard terms that we see in management contracts, ALMO contracts, all kind of outsourced social housing management contracts. So you know, we're supporting Rob and on the team to develop that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Martin Burford, please. Martin.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'd like to congratulate Rob Cogings on a very laudable report, if only a first step, of course, because most of the sites are going to be fairly small and scattered around the district, small developments. But I share the concerns that Sue raised just now, and particularly Councillor O'Brien immediately before me, about the future involvement that council members will have in terms of, you know, day-to-day management of the properties, of what we have now, which is rather appalling, because I suspect the tendering process will end up in the housing associations, particularly Platform, for instance, having the best chance of actually winning the tender and obviously becoming the development and management agent. I've just been waiting for a month now for someone from Platform Housing to come back to me to answer a series of pertinent questions, management issues, and the 3 or 4 properties in my ward which are owned by them and managed by them. So I still have this scepticism about future, well, I suppose, advantage to members of the council in having this system as opposed to directly owned and controlled housing association property or development. So I'm wondering if Rob or someone else can reassure me on that particular issue.
Okay, can we just park that one for a second? Is Councillor Flitter there? Because I'm sorry, we didn't see your hand. Was Councillor Flitter gone?
He's gone, Chair. I've seen the chat, Mr.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Sorry, Rob, can you answer that question? We apologise for not seeing him. Sorry, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I would always say that, and hopefully members will agree, if you ever have an issue with the housing association property, you should let me know and I will follow it up. And I'm only today I've had some inquiries from members which I followed up straight away. So please direct any inquiries to me. I think
you're otherwise engaged.
Well, I think the
have we got Rob? Are we losing him?
I'm still here, Chair.
Could you start at the beginning, Rob? Sorry, could you start at the beginning now about queries and problems?
Certainly, Chairman. Thank you. I would always say to members to contact me with any inquiries in relating to housing association issues. And I think, you know, I know from the past I've managed to, I think, answer most of the questions that come to me with support from colleagues in housing associations. So housing associations and other property owners want to maintain a good relationship with the authority, and they do respond well to member inquiries. But I think as we've said in the presentation so far, we have market tested these specifications very closely with local providers, and we've learned from best practice in other areas as well. But we've also made sure that certain things like falling into arrears, we've gone further in how we want to flag up, for example, people that might be falling into arrears and have difficulty far sooner than a regular housing association or other provider would.
I think we've lost Rob momentarily.
I'm happy to come in on that.
Please, Matt, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
On a slightly different angle, just, you know, firstly to say about just to warn against assuming that any particular bidders' household names that operate in the area might be kind of shoe-ins or favourites for this. What I would say is we've been involved in several outsourcing of management and development agency contracts within the social housing sector, and particularly for the management bids. It isn't a particularly mature market where there is established kind of pricing, for example. So we have seen private providers come in and put very competitive bids forward who are now very experienced in the market. So I think when we were drafting documentation, it was absolutely with that kind of open mind, with that knowledge of how broad the market is still at the moment with outsourced housing management. And then I think just to kind of to touch on points that others have raised so far, there will be more control exerted from the council than is possible if you don't have the stock and you aren't the landlord. And then in terms of comparing that to developing an in-house development or management functions, I mean, I think what Rob was really keen to work with us on was a plan and an approach that was, you know, proportionate to the scale of what we're talking about here, that would represent value for money for the council as well. And you know, notwithstanding that, I think there's also certainly a kind of longer term vision here that, yes, it, you know, is outsourced for the 10-year program that's been presented today, but this is the start of the council having stock again for the first time in 20 odd, maybe 30 years. And it's I think there is a kind of long-term vision piece to this as well as the kind of greater level of control. And as I've touched on before, we've tried to, as much as possible, build in controls around quality into the documents.
Thank you very much. I've got 4 final speakers: Paulie and Shirley, Atkin and Purdy. So, Councillor Paulie.
Yes, hello. I'm coming back to the business of trying the management and problems that might arise. Have we considered for the housing that we're going to provide having a very strong tenant associations who work with us directly rather than going to the management team, so that we can keep say a 3-monthly update on what's going on in the housing that we own? Because you can get one picture perhaps from the management team and another from the actual residents, and not all residents are able to actually put into words what it is they're experiencing. They come through us, but they don't come through us until it's really got to quite a difficult point for them. So a tenant association might preempt any difficulties and pick them up at an early stage.
Rob or Matt? Matt.
Yeah, just to say again, I think we've been really careful in the specifications to recognise that, and Erin and I come from, you know, a world of only working really in the social housing sector. So we recognise the value that kind of resident engagement brings. So absolutely, in the specification, we've been explicit about the requirement for the managing agent to listen to residents' ideas for improvement to the service, to absolutely record all resident engagement, report that back to the council, and analyse, you know, any trends in feedback, any common issues that are arising, and be clear on how they respond to that as well, and how that leads to improvements, as well as regular satisfaction surveys as well, again, which will feature as key KPIs to the council. So, you know, I think the regulator takes quite a clear view and clear line on the level of engagement that it expects to be provided to social housing tenants, whether that's provided by private providers or registered providers. But I think we've tried to go a step beyond that in the specification and be quite clear and robust in the approach to customer service, but also resident engagement, really importantly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
May I come back on that, Chair?
Yes, quickly, please.
Yes. Yes, I've read the specification to a certain extent, and I have missed some of the later paragraphs, but anyway, I think it would be good if we could actually get involved ourselves as owners rather than just leaving it up to the management team, because we have, I'm sorry to say, we do have some problems with some of the management providers that the housing associations around here. Even though you say, you know, we've got all these indications of what they should do in place, it's a little difficult to accept that.
On that point, I would just say if the council was minded to encourage the establishment of a residents' association, then there's nothing in the documentation that we've produced, or nothing about the approach that is contained within this paper that precludes the council from doing that. And again, I think what the other comment I would have on that is just to be mindful of the scale of the programme that we're talking about. So I think, you know, it's 7 units initially within the first 2 years, and 52 over 10 years, and so, you know, if residents want to establish an association, and if the council want to support that, like I said, there's nothing that precludes that in the document and in the approach taken.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just wanted to really welcome this and thank Rob particularly for all the work he's put on and determination he's put into this proposal over some time. I've got a couple of questions. Firstly, in the management agent specification, it deals with assignment, and presumably this is assignment of tenancies between one individual and another. And my question is, if we encourage assignment, how do we make sure that these properties are still available for those who most need them? That was the first question. The second was about the actual building. How can we make sure that the design of the buildings are attractive, so we're delivering attractive homes that people want to live in, not just more houses? Thank you.
Yeah, so on the assignment point, that's in relation to leaseholder. So that's the shared ownership units, and so I think just like the rented accommodation, the whoever the provider ends up being would be expected to follow an allocations criteria. That was seen to be fair, and then as with all social housing, that is structured in such a way that it's made available to people that are otherwise not adequately served by the private housing market.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we've got Councillor Atkin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to thank Rob and his team and Altair for bringing this forward. I know it's something the council has been talking about for a number of years now, so I'm very glad now we're actually seeing the conclusion of this and trying to build our own housing. So I'm very happy. I'm very supportive of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as one who was raised up on a council house estate, I'm not a rabid Tory. I've got certain social values, and I think it's very important. And I said this when I came into my leadership role, that I want to see this council build some council houses. So this first step is really encouraging. I thank Rob, I particularly thank Avato. Like Councillor Ratcliffe, I was involved in it in the beginning, and like Councillor Ratcliffe, I'm also, and others have said, nervous about these big organisations like Platform. So I'm very comforted by the answers tonight. I know, Chairman, you want to move on to the vote. I just want to say, as leader to everybody concerned, thank you for your interest in this. With all the questions raised tonight, I've never heard so many contributions. It's been great, and it shows the initiative and excitement of this project for Derbyshire Dales.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Jackie, could we have the vote, please? So if you could all get ready, you know the alphabet, I hope, and get ready to unmute yourself and say for or against or abstain. Thank you, Jackie.
Councillor Allison.
For.
Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Wright.
For.
Buckler.
For.
Bull. For. Martin Burfoot.
For.
Sue Burfoot. For. Buttle.
For.
Chapman.
For.
Cruz.
Councillor Cruz. Move on.
Councillor Donnelly.
Move on.
Fitzherbert.
For.
Flitter. Oh, he's gone. Froggatt.
For.
For. Did you?
Campbell.
For.
Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Hughes.
For.
Lees.
For.
Tony Morley.
For.
Michelle Morley.
For.
O'Brien.
For.
Corley.
4.
Purdy,
4,
Ratcliffe,
4,
Rose, Shirley,
4.
Slack,
4,
Statham,
4,
Dutton,
4,
Swindle,
4,
Wayne,
4,
Wakeman.
4.
So
Can we
I
go back to,
need,
do you need
Councillor
Councillor
Cruz.
Rose?
Oh,
He's frozen. Councillor Rose, you there? Can you put your hand up to say yes? Or thumb up, thumb up? I think that's a 4. Yeah, that's a 4. Thank you. Jackie?
Councillor Cruz
Yeah, hello, I'm 4.
and Councillor Donnelly.
Absent. I think we've lost him.
no, he's put his thumb up, Chair. Just
Oh, right. I beg your pardon. Okay. He's 4.
Okay, that's unanimous then.